Scientifically, everything is a vibration, right? Like at a molecular level, if you go back, everything is a vibration. And when you chant something, when you say a certain mantra, it is also vibration, right? You are emitting something out in the universe through vibration, and you want a certain energy embedded in you.
There's a concept called resonance, the sanctum sanctorium, what they call it, or garbhagriha, or all of those things. So they are constructed in a way where the frequencies of whatever's being chanted, whatever's being said, they amplify, they match the frequency, and they lead to a larger thing.
If you want God to be female, God will be female. If you want God to be male, God will be male. If you want God to be Shiva, He will be Shiva. If you want God to be Vishnu, He will be Vishnu. God is everything and God is nothing. So it's this balance where whatever you want it to be, it will be that. So we have so many different gods, and all gods are one.
A Sankarshan Joshi trip.
Check. Yes, audio is rolling. Finally. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Sankarshan Joshi trip. This is a very special one because it's a 50th episode, Golden Jubilee. And on this episode, we have the podcast's favorite guest, Vaishakh Dutt. So, Vaishakh Dutt, he is a stand-up comedian, he's an avid storyteller, he writes stories, he direct plays, he's also an actor, so he's a theatre enthusiast. And if you are a regular listener to the podcast, then you obviously know who Vaishakh Dutt is. So, Vaishakh, welcome to the podcast again.
Thank you for having me, Sankarshan. You missed out one thing. Now, #corporate, sucked into the corporate lifestyle. But it feels good to be back here. Fifth time that I'm coming on this podcast. So like once in every 10 episodes. So that's the pattern. And yeah, hopefully many more to come. And looking forward to platinum, diamond, emerald, whatever.
But I don't know, but for some weird reason, for Silver Jubilee you were there, right? And in that episode, I think I told you even for Golden Jubilee you will be there. So, you're here finally. And
yeah,
this is a great start for me as well as you, because I took sort of a sabbatical from doing podcast. Not intentional, but it just happened. Like a lot of different things was happening in my life, so I didn't get enough time. Also the work. So like this is the 50th episode. I put in a lot of effort into making sure that from now I can do seamlessly like a recording podcast. There were a lot of things happening, man. Like I had to fine tune a lot of different things, and it is a 50th episode. And for you, from tomorrow or day after, you're gonna start your corporate life. So how are you feeling about that?
I had a taste for it. Like I did intern for 4 months, and like it pretty much gave me the complete experience. Like even though I was an intern, I was thrust into a very full-fledged, very hectic job, and like I do have a taste for it. But the only difference now is like back then, like offices weren't that open. Now offices are open, and I might have to travel, go through all of the usual, Bangalore techie lifestyle, which is the Silk Boat traffic, traveling, all that bullshit. So let's see where life takes me. Excited, anxious, all emotions at once. But yeah, feels good. And how are you doing? Like, coming back to the podcast, how does it feel?
I'm good, man. I didn't know that I wanted to record a podcast so bad in such a long time. When you want to do something, there are so many different things that comes in your way, and like it'll stop you from doing. Literally, the mic that I'm using now is a new one, and the laptop that I'm recording is also a different one, and the camera that I'm recording in is also different. Like the entire thing is different. So I had to start from the scratch in a way, because I had a rhythm and I was on a roll. Like I know what to do. like muscle memory. I'm like, I take out the mic, I create this setup, and it was just happening. Now things change, right? Like even technically also from sort of software standpoint, I'm like, I'm working on different things. One after the other kept coming, one after the other kept coming. I was like, oh God, like when am I ever gonna record a podcast? It's like when you take break for such a long time, right? Like I took 1 or 2 months, more than that also. I recorded a podcast, the previous one, which didn't have a video, unfortunately, because of technical issues. So before that, I took like 1 or 2 months, and then after that also like 1 or 2 months. So I was nervous, honestly. I really like this space, man. Like me doing this podcast, I really like doing it. It makes me feel happy. So I felt like, something was missing in me that I was not uh, paying attention to. So yeah, a lot of time I took away from, like, in a way it was a process of self-discovery. Like I was discovering a lot of different things. I was reading different things. So it was great. So
Okay. So, something that's like, I discussed this with Vishnu, another Bisibelebois and very, very, very close friend of mine. And this is something like we discussed, and we also, talked about this on, like, we wanted to start a podcast as well. And then we kind of recorded this, but it's unreleased. But something that we discussed during that conversation was that, is there something that's something that's inside you that you can lose? So for example, what made me think all about this was, if you watch the IPL, like Virat Kohli had like a terrible season, and like he has been going through a slump for quite a while now. And so Virat Kohli, obviously, he I fell in love with his cricket back in 2016 when I was in, just finished 10th grade. And he used to play, the 2016 IPL season was insane, right? So where he scored like 973 runs in one season, like the attitude, the charisma, the bad boy ruggedness, and like just like the way he used to play, and like Indian, like giving back to Australian cricketers while sledging and all of that, like that's what made me fall in love with everything Virat Kohli, right? And like I even wrote an article in my college magazine, talking about lessons to learn from Virat Kohli, and I wrote stuff like, stand up for your team, believe in yourself, give it back, and all of these things, which I truly, truly admired about him. But like, yeah, later as time passed, like now I had like this image of him built in my head, right? And like, yes, he did have bad performances here and there, but like recently, like for the past 2 years almost, so he's been going through a slump in his form, and like he hasn't been playing well at all. Like the IPL season was just a testament to that. Like his form was very, very bad. So that got me thinking, like someone who, like a legend or my role model or whatever you want to call it, like seeing them fall in front of my eyes, right? Seeing them struggle. Like he got out in one match and he was like, God, why? Like seeing your God do that, like, okay, it shows them as like, they're just mortal. And like, I don't know, it kind of got me thinking, what was it like, was there something that was like deep inside Virat Kohli, like that talent, that whatever that kept him going for so long? And then suddenly did he just lose it, or does he need to practice or what? And to connect that with me, the fear is like, you've spoken this about in your podcast as well, like Vaishakh's just naturally funny, or like any conversation with you will make you laugh or something like that. So like a fear that got in me was like, what if I stop being that? Like what if I lose my sense of humor? What if I, I'm not able to do that anymore? And connecting that with your podcast as well, like now you're coming back, so like is there a fear that, hey shit, like maybe I don't know how to do a podcast anymore, maybe I'm not going to be that good of a guest, maybe I just lost all that I learned? So that's a very valid fear, right?
no, it's mostly the fear was, will I lose the interest of doing it? Like, I wanted to do it so bad that now that I've taken a break, doing a podcast takes a lot of effort, man. Like, and it's an effort that is not as rewarding. So it's a very self reward, like in a sense it makes me content and happy, and that's a intangible reward that I get from doing this. So it's a fear of, like, now that I'm used to being lazy and not putting in efforts, would that make me stop doing this? Like, that was one of the fear, and it was mostly about, so will it stop my growth as a podcast, right? Like, now that I've taken a break, I was gaining audience. So episode by episode, like, new people started listening. Will it drop? That was one of a fear. It's like you're building something brick by brick and will start falling apart. But honestly, right, it didn't affect me to a point where I was losing my sleep. Like, I was still getting a good sleep and I was not stressing too much about it, because whatever I was going through, right, in that phase, like whatever I was learning, that was worthy about talking into podcast. So whatever, I was learning a lot of different things. I was reading different things. Now I want to start reading from Shiva's perspective what Ramayana is. So, and couple of different things I was reading. So it gave me a lot of different perspectives, which I thought, that will help me be a better host of this podcast. And also, what do you think that Virat Kohli lost, or even with the fear of you, right? Like, you do stand-up comedy and you're also an improv comedian, and comedy is something that you truly value, and that's a huge part of yourself, right? So what do you think that entire thing is about, like the process of did you give that a much deeper thought?
So I'll to be like, to be very honest, like I don't know how I found comedy with the whole Virat Kohli thing. Like, I don't know, like that's just like, it's very common. They say like, what's that quote? Form is temporary, class is permanent. Stuff like that. I guess that's what you could just say with Virat Kohli. Okay, he's just having some technical difficulties. He can figure it out. He needs to practice harder. Whatever. Something that I still did admire about him was that even despite all of that, he laughed about it. He was, he kept this thing. Like, even though if he performs terribly in a match, when they're fielding, he'll still have the same energy and enthusiasm and all of that. Those are things which I admire. But like, also, it's also like it feels like if I, for example, like I give out a bunch of shows and then like the shows are terrible. If I still end up acting happy after the show and like celebrating, and I feel like that's all an act. I don't feel like I've earned anything. But yeah, that's the whole Virat Kohli side, and I guess like it is what it is, and like life has its way, and you find a way to get better, and if you do, you do, and if not, you don't. So you can't control the outcome. But that being said, like me, I don't know how I came across comedy. Was it like a defense mechanism, or was it like something that a childhood inspiration or whatever? Was it me being a people pleaser, wanting everybody to like me and laugh at me? I don't know where it exactly came from, but something that genuinely gives me joy is like the two things. One is like making people happy and like forgetting the current moment. That like gives me a lot of happiness, and like the feeling after having done something, like
Yeah,
whole process of creation and birthing something. And like
true.
in a show, you start a show, months of preparation for it, then the show happens, and then it ends with an applause, right? So everything's worth that applause, I feel. So that these are some things that I really like. But yeah, I don't know how I came across comedy, but like when I felt like comedy was the thing for me was ironically, like the thing is, I am very analytical as a person. I'm very critical, especially of myself. I am an overthinker. I'm very analytical. I think so much, and I'm always thinking. So like, if you have been to any of my like seen me after any of my shows, it's like the show happens, the show goes on, and after the show's done, I'm immediately just sitting and like thinking, what mistake, where did I go wrong, how could have this been done better, like the good side of it is that like, okay, it teaches me and I remember and like I correct myself. But the bad thing is I take myself very, like I'm very hard on myself, and like I don't celebrate the like, fucker, you just did a show right now, and like it's you just did it, like just fucking let cut some slack and enjoy the reap the benefits, right? So I feel like that's just who I am in general. Like I keep thinking about a lot of things, right? The only time where I don't think is when I'm on stage. The funny thing about this is that the funny thing is, the most I am myself is when I'm not myself on stage. The most I feel like Vaishak is when I'm portraying a character, right? It might be a cop who, or a plumber, or anything that the improv, the audience suggested, or maybe a play or whatever character that I'm doing. I feel like when I'm in that, uh, when I'm portraying someone else, is when I feel the most like myself, because that time there is like no thinking about the past or the future. It's just the most present meditative experience that I can get. So when I feel that, I feel like, okay, hey, I belong here. And something that I realized like is, you don't know how much you miss it until you know
Get
have a
away
taste
from
for it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, not get away from it. Like I feel like once, now you're in Bombay, right? So
Yeah.
once you're in Bombay, I think you've just made peace with the fact that you're in Bombay. But like once you come back to college, then you'll be like, shit, I didn't even know that I missed this. And then you start missing everything again. That's just something that I realized. So uh, the whole meditative aspect of it, where like that's what I think with respect to comedy, right? I feel the most present and all of that. But the fear side of it is, my sense of comedy does not come from scripting stuff. Like I don't sit down and I don't write down what's funny, what's unfunny. I don't do that. I don't like, my sense of comedy comes from the person that I am, like the experiences that I go through, how I react to it, and how I observe things and all of that, right? So uh, I feel that like, since it's like an innate thing, like it's like a part and personality of who I am. So if I lose this personality, not only maybe only because of like the changing circumstances in my life, like with my personal relationships, with my work, with my family, etc., yada yada yada, I'm growing up, like this can take away a little bit of my personality, and I feel like that can affect my comedy as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's just the general fear behind it.
Yeah.
So
Also, I feel like in the process of so you being constantly bad at something, or like once you were good at it, but then after a period of time, like you start losing the charm. So it's like, I think that's a inevitable thing, because let's say, let's take the example of comedy, or let's take the example of movies, for example. Like you have a hit movie, right? Like, and you cannot keep making similar movies, because whatever is now trending, or whatever is relevant now, won't be relevant few years down the line. So it's the process that you're gonna hit to a point, like eventually. So no matter in what art form you are in, right? Like if you're a comedian, whatever jokes that you're saying right now might be relevant now, but then eventually you have to keep learning, right? Like I think you have to find a baseline which just keeps you going in the process. So you just need to find yourself, like what do you do, like what is the thing in you that is holding you to that art form. So let's say me doing this podcast, right? This is basically my diary sort of a thing, like where when I'm talking, right, there is something about this where the act of your thoughts translating into words and then they're coming out, and then that is inspiring another thought that is just coming out. So this doesn't happen when I am not doing this podcast. Like, very rarely happens. So sometimes when I want to write something or when I want to talk, only then things start rolling, and a lot of different perspectives that I thought that I had, I didn't even know about them. So I think that, and then when I talk to the guests, I learn a lot of things, and that exchange of perspectives is something that I actually love. So no matter good or bad from the podcast standpoint, right? Like, let's say if you get a lot of listeners, that's a good episode. If you don't get a lot of good, like lot of listeners, then it's not so good episode. Like, in terms of analytics, if you see what's a episode that is performed well and not. But either which ways, right, this thing of me liking the process of doing this is what keeps me going. And I think eventually you're gonna come up, then go down, come up, then go down. Like, it's the constant process. It's a process of self-discovery in a way, Like, I think you need to do a lot of different things to know a lot about yourself. Like, know different things about yourself. Like, that's what I feel personally. So, but at the core of it all, right? Like Jordan B. Peterson says, find something meaningful to do and pursue, right? Like, he keeps saying that a lot, and I feel that's a very, very, very crucial thing. Finding something meaningful and like pursuing it. It just, like, with this podcast, right, the amount of effort that I put into making this podcast, if I had made some like prank videos or some clickbaity YouTube videos, right, it would have gotten me a lot more views, money probably as well. But the reason why I didn't do that is because it's not as satisfying as this. So I do this because I learn a lot, and I just think that if I have a thought that I want to talk about, it just gets amplified while I'm talking in the podcast, and I learn a lot of different things about it. So let me just give you a random example. So in this modern day and age, a lot of people talk about feminism, right? Like, they talk about feminist. So I'm just throwing a random example, like how I've started, like how this podcast helps me, like, and with this topic feminism, I was just reading a couple of Indian mythological stories, and I was reading about like Hindu mythology. For the longest period of time, we have worshipped women, right? Like, we have worshipped women as goddess. Like, every trait of femininity, we have worshipped it. So, and over the period of time, I don't know where we lost all those teachings, but then it translated into something very, very, very different. So when it comes to women, right, like, let me give you an example. There is this, so in India there are different Shakti Pitas, right? Like, Shakti means energy, power. So there are different places where there are a lot of Devi temples, right? They're called Shakti Pitas. And one Shakti Pitam, it's called Kamakya temple, and they call it the leading goddess, So every year, for 3 days, they close the temple because the goddess menstruates. And I am not making this up, but like when you go there, right, like, they cover, so there is a vagina shaped sculpture that people go and worship there, like they worship that, and they cover cloth to the goddess, and after 3 or 4 days, I don't know how long the goddess menstruate there, according to the belief of the people who reside in that area. And when they come back, right, like, they close the temple for those many days, and after that, when they come, right, the cloth will have blood stains on it. So, and a lot of people take a piece of the cloth and they worship it. So there's something like miraculous. And before we get into if something like this is possible or not, let's just talk about the fact that we are actually worshipping and we are praying to a sculpture which is shaped like a vagina. Can this be any more empowering to women? Like, when you look at from the woman's standpoint, right? Like, if we truly look at how things were talked about in the past, right, it's so fascinating, man. Like, there is no bias, like, there is no prejudice, there is no uh, myth, there's no taboo, like, there's no, sorry, myth is a wrong word, but there's a lot of taboos, like, now, right? But back then, we were free of all of that. And that just fascinates me.
For sure. I mean, like, in a lot of ways, uh, a lot of cultures, a lot of ethnicities, etc. They have all of us have our own history, and uh, we've always been progressive, and like we've always had very fascinating things, which I guess over time we've lost, and like I guess that's the point of us being humans, right? Like I think the more we know that we are human, we start going backwards rather than progressing. The thing about the Kamakya temple is it's in Assam, right? Uh, it's in Assam, and something called the Ambubalachi Mela goes on there, and that's the second largest gathering of people after the Kumbh Mela. So it's called the Ambubalachi Mela, and history behind the temple is that uh, you know that like Shiva's first wife Sati, and Sati, Shiva fell in love with Sati, and Daksha was Sati's father, and Shiva got married Sati, and then whatever they get married, and once what happens is Daksha, who's the king, right? So he walks into a gathering of gods, and Shiva does not stand up. And then Shiva knows that he shouldn't stand up because Shiva is obviously a more powerful god, and he's higher, right? If he stands up in like to bow down to Daksha, it's not good for Daksha himself. Like bad luck will fall upon him. That's why they say even in like um, big people should not touch the feet of younger people, right? It's just like a sign of respect or
Older
whatever. So
people.
Shiva does not, yeah. So Shiva does not get up. And for this, Daksha gets triggered, like he gets very, very angry. So he thinks like, how dare Shiva, disrespect me, my daughter, he's my son-in-law, and all of this. So what he does to take revenge is he witnesses a yaga, and he calls every god, every, dignitary there is on earth except Shiva, right? So he does that. And then Sati is one day, she's just sitting by the hills, and then she sees like this huge caravan of people traveling. And then she goes and asks her, and they're like, Sati, you didn't know it's your own father's this thing. So Sati gets like, okay, what's happening? And then she follows back. And then there, like, it's seen that like Vishnu, Brahma, Indra, everyone's there except Shiva. So Sati goes to her dad and asks, like, what's happening? And Daksha speaks ill of Shiva, like, ungrateful fellow. What does he think of himself in this thing? That's why I didn't call him. Sati cannot believe that her own father is talking like this, and she cannot stand the disrespect towards Shiva. And like she says, like to the other gods, like you all knew Shiva wasn't here and you're still here. Like she just gets very angry and upset about it. So she steps into the fire. So she steps into the fire to sacrifice herself because she cannot tolerate the humiliation.
Before
Now
we
that is
proceed,
when,
right? Before we
yeah.
proceed, right? Like, I just wanted to stop you right there because I know a different interpretation of the same story that you told. So
Okay,
I just wanted to say that part, and then I think the ending of where we are going is the same.
okay.
So the other perspective is that the way how Shiva looks, right? He's a uh, how do I put this?
He's uncouth. He's dirty. He's covered in tiger skin and
I
snake
feel
skin and all
like,
of that.
yeah, I feel like that's how he want people to see him as, uh,
Hmm.
is what I feel. So Sati falls in love with Shiva, and then Shiva falls back for her, and then they get married, right? And the Daksha, the father, is not, he does not approve of their marriage because of how Shiva looks, right? Like, for the first time, when Sati's mom looks at Shiva, she just faints. Like, that's how absurd looking he was, according to them. So she just faints. So they don't approve of this marriage, and for the same yaga, right? So Sati says that, he's my father, like at some point or the other, like he will have to forgive me. So she just thinks that, if I go back, if I go attend this yaga, we can just make amends and we can make peace. So when she goes there, he just questions her presence there. Like, what are you doing here? Like, you're not invited. Like, why are you here? And she cannot take that insult. And he also insults Shiva, and she cannot take that, and she falls into the fire. So yeah, from there you can continue, Vaishak.
It's the same thing. Like obviously, like she cannot tolerate the humiliation towards herself and Shiva and all of that. So that's where the whole practice of sati started.
And then when she falls into the fire, Shiva gets the news, right, that Sati is dead. And
so then the news travels back to Shiva, and then like in the yaga there, like when Sati sacrifices herself, like there are like bad omens everywhere. Like Daksha's left eye, left hand, and left leg, all of them start paining together. That's a very bad omen apparently. The crows are cawing, and the wolves are howling and all of that. So like it's like something very bad's going to happen. The news slowly travels back to the Shivas, and then Shiva gets into such a rage, and then like he plucks one handful of his hair and he throws it, and Veerabhadra is born, and another handful, and then he throws it, and Mahakali is born. And so Mahakali and Veerabhadra and all of his ganas, so the Shiva's followers are called the ganas, and so that's Nandi and all of these people, everyone goes, and a huge battle ensues there, right? And then finally this whole battle happens, and then like the gods, they faint and all of that, and Veerabhadra Shiva comes, and he Veerabhadra or Mahakali decapitates like Daksha, like takes his head off. And then once that happens, then Shiva comes back, and then they see, and then the gods come and tell like what Daksha did was wrong, but he's still the king, and like they can't let this happen. So Shiva says, okay, I will forgive him, but for him to remember his his bad behavior or whatever, he will now have the head of a goat. So Daksha then like the sacrificial goat, its head, they put it on Daksha. So that's the way he's humiliated. But then Shiva then carries Sati's dead and decaying body. So he takes that, and when he's traveling back,
he dances apparently. So Shiva is known for dance, right? Like Shiva, dance originated from Shiva, like a majority chunk of the Indian classical dance, right? Like the origin of it, Shiva, it comes from there. And Shiva's dance tend to be very destructive, like the Shiva's Thandava, right? He just carries Sati's body, and he's just dancing so ferociously that Shiva is also known as god of destruction, right? Like when he dances ferociously, the entire earth becomes a chaos, right? Like the volcanoes erupt, like the world is about to, earth is about to come to an end. And that's when Vishnu, right? Like Vishnu throws his the Sudarshan Chakra, the blade that he carries in one of his finger, right? Is that what you call it in English? Like I'm just calling it blade, like it's a circular thing, like this ninja thing. So Vishnu just throws that to stop Shiva from doing that, and that thing cuts Sati's body in several parts. I don't know if it's 18 or more than that. So it just cuts in different parts, and each part falls in different places on earth in India, and those individual places are called Shakti Pitas, where we go and we worship, and different body parts has a different aspect to it, right? And the vagina fell in that place, the Kamakya temple that I was talking about, right? Like it fell there. I don't know if it is in Assam or not, like I'll just have to fact check it.
It's in Assam.
Okay, like I didn't know that. So
it's in Guwahati.
Oh yeah, it's in Guwahati. My geography is very bad, so apologies.
So I didn't know about the Vishnu Sudarshan Chakra thing.
Yeah.
I just
what?
What I thought was like he was carrying the dead and decomposing body, so like pieces were falling off is what I had in my head. But yes, so the vagina fell in near the Kamakya temple. That's the story behind it. That's why people also or people with fertility issues come and worship there. So
Yeah.
it's considered like the fertility temple.
Yeah.
So you-
It's a very interesting, like, guys, where are we living in? Like we are living in a day and age, like, few years back, we, like, if you go to a shop and if you want to buy a pad for you, like, if you have a period and if you want to buy pad, they cover it up with a newspaper, put it in a black polythene bag, and then you're carrying it like a spy who's trying to exchange some codes, like, that's how you carry it. Like, you carry it like a spy. Like, so secretively you're carrying those pads. Where were we? Like, back then, we were so open, and we, like, nothing was a bad thing, nothing was a good thing. It was just things that were worth discussing. There was such a healthy exchange of perspectives, and we were such, like, open minded people. And now, like, over the period of time, it just translated to be something else. And then now when I look back, it just fascinates me, like, what the hell? Like, we are, like, people go to a temple and worship a vagina like struck, like a sculpture, but are not allowed to talk about periods. Like, guys, like, where are we living in?
yeah. So
Hi,
so
Vivek.
I feel like yeah. So I feel like that's always there. You know, a lot of uh, phallic phallic meaning like a penis, right? So a lot of shrines exist not only in India but in many other places in the world as well. So I don't know, like yeah, we have. It is true to say that we have fallen back on our ways quite a bit, and it's definitely true, and that's the thing
Yeah.
about us being human. But something also very fascinating is that like behind like every temple there's a story like this, and that's like
Yeah.
super fascinating to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that.
Also, other fascinating thing is, Vaishak, how we both had a different perspectives or different versions of the same story. And I feel like both the versions convey a different message. So when you were talking about that, right, though thought that, you have to respect your elders, this sort of the the inclining message, right? If you keep digging, like, there could be different interpretations from the same story.
No, it's not respect your elders, it's to let go of your ego.
Hmm.
That's the
Hmm.
message.
Hmm.
To not have any
Yeah.
ego that I'm bigger than you or anything like that. And like if you do anything out of spite just to anger and to take revenge, nothing good's gonna come to you.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah.
message.
Exactly.
Also the message of love and like you know being everything for your partner. That's also
Yeah.
there. But yeah.
It's so crazy, right? Like, I feel like people, you find what you look for. Like, when you look back at these mythological stories, you don't have to approve of gods. You can just look at it from a story standpoint, and that's exactly what we did through an entire episode last time you were here, right? Pick up what you want. And also, the best part is, when you read the Gita, Krishna says, follow your dharma, right? Like, follow your dharma, and then do uh, what you are inclined for, and don't expect any results, and do it for the sake of doing it. Dharma is such a it's a terminology that could have multiple iterations. It could have multiple different definitions based on your perception and your perspective. And I feel that's how it's supposed to be, because your life, your experience, and you have lived through it in a way, and no matter what you see, you're gonna see through that perspective, right? Like, any spiritual relic or any story that you listen to, it should impact you, right? Like, you listen to it from your perspective. Like, you listen to it from your perspective, and that's what makes sense, right? Like, when you tell me a story which doesn't relate to me, which I can't connect to, it's not gonna have any impact on me, right? But, like, these stories, when you look at it from your life experience, it makes sense. Listening to something, understanding something are two different things, right? You can listen to a story, but you can understand through your own experience, like when things make sense to you. It's like you have to cook a potato, right? Like you have to boil it for you to eat it. Like for you to digest it, you have to go through a process so that it's digestible to you. But few animals, they can just directly eat it because their digestive system are different. So any story, like any god, like any mythological thing that you read, like you read it from your perspective, and that's how it's supposed to be. Like there is no universal Gita. Like there is no this is what it is. Like whatever I'm preaching, my perspective, I can't preach it like this is what it is, like a universal perspective, because a lot of people have a lot of different experiences, and there are different Gitas to different people.
And it also completely, depends on your personal life experiences, right? And that's the beautiful thing about it. So, like, for me, if I have a particular interpretation of, let's say, I'll give you the example of Karna itself, right? Like, um, this is why Karna is my favorite character, etc. Then, like, once someone, and that, for me, that opinion has been shaped because of my life, right? And the values that I thought were important, the way the story was told. So that's how I felt, that's why I thought that's what made Karna my favorite character, basically. Then you can get someone else and tell, no, Karna did this, this bad thing he did. I'd be like, yeah, so what? In my life also, I've done wrong things.
Yeah,
But still,
yeah,
despite that, there's still, but that's because of my personal experience. But let's say for someone else, for someone who believes that Rama didn't do any wrong to Sita, like we can take two separate personalities, right? You can take one of a female or one of a woman who's been hurt by a man, right? So she will empathize more with Sita than what me and you could ever, we ever could, right? So she's going to empathize so much more with Sita. Whereas a son, a man who's had to sacrifice a lot and do a lot for his parents or for his family, will empathize a lot with Rama more than a woman ever could, right? So which is why, like, we tend to hold on to it and we tend to defend our favorite characters so much more. Like, no, what he did was not wrong. What he did was not right. Like, that's what makes us believe, because the thing is, we see ourselves in them. So me seeing Karna reminds me of a time where I was, shunned, or I was humiliated by all of my friends, and I had to find another friend group. So I find a home in him. So which is why I will defend. I'm not defending Karna. I'm defending myself.
yeah.
Right? So
Through your
that's the thing about
experiences,
it.
you relate it to. It just spoke to you, right? Like a certain aspects of it.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful thing about stories and mythological stories especially, is we see ourselves in them.
Yeah.
And which is why we form our own opinions, and we form our own, not only just mythological stories, but stories like Punya Koti or like Shravana Kumara or whatever, right? So all of these stories which were told to us as children, we find ourselves in them. And once we find, like, we just carry on this sense of belonging, and hey, that's us. And
Yeah.
that's what shapes it. That gives its own interpretation. Like, I'm sure there's one kid who's thinking, like, why did the tiger have to sacrifice himself in Punyakoti? Like, the tiger is the hero, maybe. Right? So these are the things, like,
I think that's how it's
the beautiful
supposed to
thing.
be. I think that's how it's supposed
Yeah.
to be. Like there's no See, this is what I feel. What is right, what is wrong is subjective. Like there's no universal right is what I feel. Like it's subjective to your perspective and your own perception, because life is multidimensional. Like there would be a binary answer if life was a 2D thing, right? Like it didn't have a lot of dimensions. So I like that's what I feel. And there is something to it, man. Like before I thought you were just praying to Shiva, or you're just praying to Shiva, like Ganesha, or you're praying to a goddess, and you're asking for stuff to happen. And later on, you know what I've realized, Vaishak? Scientifically, everything is a vibration, right? Like at the molecular level, if you go back, everything is a vibration. And when you chant something, when you say a certain mantra, it is also vibration, right? And so, like, basically you are emitting something out in the universe through vibration, and you want a certain energy embedded in you. Like, that's what I feel. So now when I pray Shiva, or when I look at a certain god, right, I just want the energy that is associated with that god. Like when you say Shiva, right, he in his deep meditative state where he gives very little importance, like close to nil importance to materialistic things. And it doesn't, like, he doesn't let materialistic things bother to him, right? Like he barely has any clothes on, his appearance is very different, and he's living in Himalayas, and he's meditating, he just dances every now and then he goes back to meditation. What a life, man. Like, I'm like, we are so much dwelled in our everyday life. Like, I'm going to job, like work from home, I'm anxious about this, I'm anxious about that, oh my boss yelled at me, oh my boss did that. I When I'm pray to Shiva, I'm like, I am manifesting that energy. Like, can I have a piece of that energy? And when I, let's say, when I'm chanting something, or when I'm listening to something related to Shiva, right, like songs or any mantra, I just feel like I can feel that calmness, and I feel like I'm trying to attract that energy in me, like embed that energy in me. Like when I go to temple also, it's also a vibration. So when I start looking at this way, right, what people do when people pray, it started looking, I started looking at it from a very, very different lens. And it made so much sense to me looking at it from that lens.
True. The thing about vibration, definitely, that's the thing. Like, not only in, I feel in Hinduism, right, but where our temples, they're constructed in such a way that they amplify the vibrations of whatever's being chanted, whatever's being sung. So it definitely amplifies. And there's a concept called resonance in this thing,
Physics.
where the in physics, where the frequency of what your one frequency matches another frequency, they both get amplified together. They both, create a larger thing. So that's what happens. Like if you have gone to like a temple, which the temple structure, the sanctum sanctorium, what they call it, or garbhagriha, or all of those things. So they are constructed in a way where the frequencies of whatever's being chanted, whatever's being said, they amplify. They match the frequency and they lead to a larger this thing. The same thing is like basilicas, like in churches, where the church organs, like, and whatever the sermons being given, gospel music, right? All of these things, they also amplify, they match the frequencies, and they lead to a much more deeper thing. And the same with in Sufi music and all of these things. So like there is maybe, if I don't know if our ancestors did this knowingly or unknowingly, but knowing that how smart they were, right? I'm sure they did that knowingly as well. Like they knew there was a reason and there is a logic behind this. So that's the physics or scientific thing behind it. And like when whatever's being chanted and like the frequencies match, even like if you've gone to like Buddhist monasteries, right? There like whatever's being chanted gets amplified, and they have like this instrument, I don't know what you call it. It goes to kirtan, and then you do that.
Yeah.
All of these things, they have tapped into the frequencies of whatever's happening and how it affects the human body, right? So like this particular frequency coming and affecting us, that's what like, it helps us channelize our thinking, our being, brings us to our most ground state, I guess.
Yeah.
There is a lot of science behind it. And yeah, when you do play, I like, that's something that like I had never interpreted actually. Like I don't see God that way at all. Like when you told like whenever I pray to Shiva, I'm trying to manifest that form of lifestyle or something. That's brilliant to think about. Like I have never done that. So I have never gone to a specific temple and thought, hey, I want to be like this. Or like whenever I've gone to Rama, like, let's say Rama temple, I've never prayed in a way that, hey, I want to manifest the disciplined, ideal sun lifestyle that you had. That has never come. Whenever I've gone to Hanuman temple, I've never thought of I want to manifest the loyalty, the strength of yours. I guess that is the logic behind having multiple temples of multiple gods, where you can go
Yeah,
to each
yeah,
one and try to manifest something
yeah,
that's unique. What I would do is like, since I love stories, like I would read the stories, be in awe of it, and like just take in the values that I get from it. But like whenever I go to a temple and it's like I just pray and express my gratitude. That's all that I do. So yeah, that's a very very nice thing. I think I should start practicing that.
I feel like this is what gods are from the in a different Vedas and different relics. They say God is the Nirakar, which means he's formless, and God is genderless. God is formless, he's genderless, but in our Indian mythology, we do have forms and we do have genders, right? And this is what I feel. It's the exact same thing that we talked about in our previous podcast about Krishna, right? We talked like for Gopikas, he was this, and for Arjuna, he was that, and for different, whoever you want Krishna to be, he will be that to you. And that's what God is, man, according to me. If you want God to be female, God will be female. If you want God to be male, God will be male. If you want God to be Shiva, he will be Shiva. If you want God to be Vishnu, he will be Vishnu. God is everything and God is nothing. So it's this balance where whatever you want it to be, it will be that. So we have so many different gods and all gods are one. So yeah.
The thing is like I want God what I want God to be. Like God is what I want God to be, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That makes us so powerful to create my own God. And by doing that, I'm God myself too. There is God
Yeah.
in me as well.
Yeah, yeah. Krishna did say that, man. Like in Gita, it says, Krishna literally said, he is in everything. He said, God is in everything and everybody. So, this essence of it, right? What a beautiful thing, man. Like, if everybody is God and if everything is God, like when you look at an animal, there is a God in the animal. When you look at a human being, there is God in that person. You are not talking to that person, you are talking to the God in that person. I don't know if you know this. I heard one of a very a philosopher, like a local philosopher, like he's a guru which not a lot of people know about. So he does this namaskaram, okay, like he bows, and according to him it's like I am bowing to the God in you. So he showed a deep respect to each and like each and every human being. His name is Swami Vijayendra. Like uh, not a lot of people know about it. Like maybe I'll talk about it more in the deep or like in further episodes. Like one of his philosophy was that like he respected everybody, man. Like just think about this. Bible says love all, like, and love is everything, and Krishna says he is in everything and he is in everybody. Won't that make, like, won't it give an incentive to be nice to people? Like when you talk to somebody, there is God in that person, man. Like there is divinity. Like respect to that aspect of that person. Like he might be a cruel guy, but he does have, like, I feel when you look at it from this perspective, you just constantly spread love, respect. That like I feel that's what comes out in people. And Vaishak, when you were talking about the temples, man, I was blown away. Like I never thought about this way. There is a reason why we go to temples, right? And now when you said all of that, it just made my belief even more strong. This is something that we all argue, right? Like I don't know about the West, but in India, we're like, if God is everywhere, why do we go to temples? Like that's a constant cliche dialogue, right? Like I said that when I was a kid, and it made me feel smart. Like when you go against the grain, it makes you feel smart, right? And when you said that, I'm like, shit, man, that makes so much sense.
Definitely. Like, I don't know, like these are the things like that like really blows me away. So um like there is like so much meaning and background behind everything in our life, and that's like so beautiful. Some like something that blew me away was like a massive wow sort of moment for me was every family has a Mane Deva, right? The home of the god. And then there's always a male and a female. So for us, for my family, something that I knew was something that I knew was the male god of our family is Panduranga, and this Panduranga, the temple is Pandaralli. Okay, so Pandaralli, Panduranga. There's a village called Pandaralli, and in that, the temple of Panduranga is our home god, and it comes near Chitradurga. So I had always accepted that, and like, yeah, it makes sense to me. So uh, it made sense to me that, okay, this is the thing. There's Chitradurga in my name also, so accept it. I knew that the female god was Banshankari. So I knew that Banshankari was the female god of my family. But then later, like I was talking with my family, and when I was talking, they said like, which temple of Banshankari? And she said, my mom said Badami Banshankari. So Badami is a place near Hubli, Dharwad. It's to the extreme north of Karnataka. It's Uttar Karnataka. And like I was shocked, like what? How does this make sense? Like I am, like I don't. None of us have that Uttar Karnataka accent. We don't have any. We don't cook stuff from Uttar Karnataka. So like I was like, how can someone like a goddess in Badami be our home god? Like what's the relation to it? And then my dad explained that. So my family we were a bunch of pujaris in Badami who used to worship
Priests.
Banshankari. Yeah, priests in Badami Banshankari. There then, Bijapur is a nearby place, right? So there was a Muslim ruler there, and his invasion, right? His invasion and his intolerant rules, right? So because of that, from Badami, 100 families or so migrated, right? So our family was one of the 100 families that migrated. We then came to Pandaralli, and then my ancestors, they asked the priests of Pandaralli. The priests of Pandaralli are actually not Brahmins. So the priests of Pandaralli, they are actually Dasas. They're a scheduled tribe in like the Indian law. So they were the ones who were doing puja there. So our families, as Brahmins, we went to like quote unquote a lower caste, lower caste people. We went to them and we asked, can we do puja here as well? And they allowed us, and that's how the Pandaralli Panduranga became a new house. So that's why like it's like so fascinating that like, okay, there's like this history to my family as well, which I didn't know at all. So there's like a lot of this migration and that's a beautiful thing. Behind every temple, behind every family, they're like these such interesting and beautiful stories.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? Like each god is also so fascinating. Like I told you recently, I've been fascinated with the devis of our culture, like the goddesses. And there is this goddess called Lalita, and we say like Lalita Amavaru in Telugu. So, or like in Telugu and Kannada, we say Lalita Amavaru. So, she is the mother of the universe. So, she is also called Narayani. And Narayana, who is Vishnu, he is also like the father of the universe, right? Like he is on top of all of this, and he is the universe. So it also is it also justifies the fact how goddess and god are the same thing. Like I just figured this out recently, and it's so fascinating. And mother of the universe, right? And when you look at a goddess, there are different elements to them, and each element are a metaphorical representation of something. So Lalita, right, goddess, she had to come to kill a Rakshas called Bandasura. So she had to come to kill a goddess. She had to come to kill this Rakshasa, Bandasura. And he got a boon that, like, he had a lot of perks, and only she could be the one who could destroy him. So that's how she came to Earth. And it's so fascinating how we coined the word mother next to that goddess. Like, we call her like a Mother Lalita. So when you read the description of what sort of a goddess she is, right? I read this article somewhere where how a mother holds hand of her kid, and if the kid is trying to walk away from her, or if they want to take a wrong path, how mom pulls the hand of a kid and brings, like, this is where we're supposed to walk. And that's what this goddess does to the people who believe in her. And this is what was written there. I started thinking about how fascinating this entire description is. And you also call her a mother, and we call Mother Nature, and she's the mother of the universe. Like, it just felt so warm, man. Like, I don't have to know if a goddess like this exists, but I could just feel the energy. Like, when we look at nature, right? Like, how nature incorporates all the creatures, and how it just shelters everybody, right? Like, it just, so when we think of nature and we say Mother Nature, and we gave a human form to something as abstract as nature, why can't that be a god? Like, and that's what we all do, right? Like, when we have we just humanized the entire uh, structure of existence, could be like nature or universe, anything, and we just coined it as mother. And the way how people write songs about them, or like the way how people write stories about them, it's it's like you're building a relationship with that god, man. Like, it just makes everything so connected. Like, when I started reading about more about this goddess, right? It's like, oh, mother of universe, like, which means, like, I just felt like this instant connection, or like love. Like, wow, like, what is this warmth? Like, we all get on our heels so quickly, and we want to criticize everything. But if we just remove that critique hat, right, and we just admire how beautiful this entire structure is, and what we have written, and what our ancestors have written, like, this whole concept of God, like, how they are there, and what are the stories, what are the structures. So brilliant thing that we have for humanity.
Across all religions, across all ethnicities, across all countries. Yeah, there's like
Yeah,
such
yeah.
beautiful to, to everything, and I think it's important, and I feel like we, as like as we're moving forward, I feel we are losing um, a touch with our roots. We are losing, like, it's not important that we are aware of these little things, right? So I think it's important to preserve whatever it is that we have, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And
Time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yes, yes. No, no, no. Please, please. I was just
No, I
thinking.
didn't
That's
have
all.
anything.
Like,
I didn't have anything.
I was just thinking about uh, Dasara, and do you know Durga? Durga, right? Like, we all
Yeah.
know the goddess Durga. And yesterday I heard this story. The reason why Durga had to come was there was this Rakshasa uh, who got a boon from one of his parents. Like, his dad was oh, this is such a crazy story. Okay, I'll just take a step back. So there was this guy who got a boon, and he had a power to ask anything he wanted, and he asked for a very powerful offspring, like his son, like whoever comes, he wanted them to be very powerful. And and so whenever they get a boon like this, right, they say statements like, I cannot be killed by this, I cannot be killed by a man, I cannot be killed by an animal, I cannot be killed by. So when they're asking for a boon, there are these specifications, right? So he asked for that, and his son could not be killed by any of the things except a woman. Okay, like, that was the boon he got, because women are very weak, right? Like they're very. The only reason why they exist is because humans can experience them, through lust.
The thing is, like, everything what happens in like these, especially these like Hindu mythological stories, is like the the villain or the asura asks for something. The gods they find like a defect, like a tech,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
flaw
Exactly.
in, like legal terms they say like in the clause in terms and conditions. In terms and conditions,
Yeah,
one
exactly.
missing. Take that and
Yeah,
then take it. Yes. So
yeah,
I what you're telling the story of Mahishasura. So like what he said
yeah.
was
Mahishasura.
he cannot be killed by any man. So the
Yeah.
gods realized, oh, he can't be killed by any man, but he can be killed by a woman.
You know what? Like it's so crazy. Like Mahishasura is born when his father uh, got a buffalo impregnated. Did you know that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he's also, so the Mahishasura, right? Like I cannot give more details about his father. Like there is a name to that. Like a lot of names, I can't just remember them. But this guy, he's also a shapeshifter. So he's like uh, he has a lot of perks. But then like Shiva, Vishnu, lot of like nobody could kill him. Like he'd just fall and he's just come back again. So what all the gods would do is they put all their energy and they just created a female god. Like they manifested a female god who was Durga, and every god gave their weapon to that goddess.
Durga
So
or Chamundi, both.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there is this whole sequence of how she comes and how she kills him. Maybe I'm gonna cover that more in one of a solo episode where I'll just dig deeper and like explain detail about this story because it's just so fascinating. And she just kills that Rakshasa at the end of the story, and that's how the Rakshasa end, right? This Rakshasa has a certain characteristics. Like they are pure evil, man. Like they have lust, they have all the like negative, like greed, all of those, right? I just started thinking like we human beings, we also have all of these things, right? And we want goddess Durga to internally kill all these negative things. So we have a Rakshasa inside us. Like imagine this entire story happened within you, where there is a Rakshasa within you which needs to be killed. So it's like this entire mythological stories can happen within you also, where every bad guy has a particular strong negative trait where there are a lot of chances that even you can also have a part of that trait in you, like lust or greed or anything like that. So you seeking goddess Durga, when you chant, right, you're basically uh, manifesting that I have this negative like demon in me, come and kill it. Like all the negative thoughts, like come and kill those negative thoughts. That's like this is my personal interpretation of how I read all of these stories, man. Like if like you listen to any of Durga's songs, or there are different things, right? Or at least when you read about them, you're basically manifesting that energy inside you, and you want a source of positive energy to kill that negative side that is there in you, to shed light. Like each story is so fascinating, and it's a it's a process of self discovery, man. Like at the end of it all, like you are beyond who you think you are. Like this physical body, if it has so much memories, like in terms of evolution perspective, right, each and everything that we have in our body, to each and every bone, it has evolved to accustom the current environment. Like we have adapted to be more like how do I put this, like to incorporate whatever is going on currently in the nature, right? Like we have adapted to that. If our physical body has a capability to evolve that way, we are all a speck of energy, right? Like at the end of it all, like our life energy, and energy can neither be created nor be destroyed, which means our energy has existed since existence started. Like since creation started, we our energy has existed. Like even when we die, according to Hindu scriptures, this life energy leaves this body and it picks up another body, right? So this energy can neither be destroyed nor be created, like it just transforms, right? So that energy, imagine how much memory that energy has. So I think that's what we are all like trying to tap into, or that's what our ancestors also try to tap into, man. Like, just what do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. And to like add on to your interpretation, right? So in every story across all uh, types of ethnicities or whatever you want to call it, right? Especially in Hindu mythological stories, the birth of every villain, the birth of every asura, the birth of every rakshasa is because of a god only. A god is the one who comes and gives the birth or gives is the reason for the existence of Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Mahishasura, everything, right? Bhasmasura. It's a god who created this. And like the thing is like gods create their own demons, right? And that shows like gods are in a way human as well, right? We are creating our own difficulties. And to think of this from a human sense, like you said, the Rakshasas are like, they showcase something that's wrong within us and we need to correct it. We are the ones who create our bad habits as well. As gods, we are the ones who give rise to our worst tendencies. And we are the ones who should come up with a way to destroy them. And that's the whole life cycle. We get into something, we create our bad behaviors, and then within our bad behaviors, we have to create something, find ourselves, and destroy that bad behavior and come out the better person. So that's the story. The thing is, like, the gods themselves are creating their demons. So it's fascinating, and and that's the continuous cycle of life, right? That's the continuous cycle of life. That's the continuous cycle of change. It's ebb and flow. It's all, everything's change. Everything has to change, and there are good times. There are bad times. We create our bad times. We create our good times. So yeah, that's the only thing. And this ebb and flow and this change is what you've said has been. It's in us from like millions of years. So yeah, so that's a beautiful thing.
It's a flow of cosmic events, that's what I like to call it. Like, we're just a vessel of a flow of cosmic events where everybody's life is interconnected. Some rich guy, some president somewhere can just go bonkers and click on the nuclear like launch button, and then it can just decide a fate of all of us. So every single life form on this earth is interconnected with each other, and we all shape and create each other's destiny. It's this harmony and expression of cosmic flow of things, like we're just being a vessel, and there's this energy flowing through all of us, and the source of that energy is the same. You know what I mean? Like, I am shaping your destiny by talking to you right now, and you are shaping my destiny by talking to me right now. We can just end this podcast 5 minutes before, and that could trigger a chain of events that could alter my life. And just a minute later, like 5 minutes late, that could change, that my life would be completely different. In a way, you're framing my destiny and I'm framing your destiny, and it's this beautiful dance, and that's what we do every single day, right? From someone else's fault, and we get stuck in a traffic, and then we can't reach to the hospital on time and someone else dies. Like, it's just every single event in this world is connected, man. Like, when we just zoom out, right, everything is just moving in a very harmonious fashion, and we are a part of a bigger picture, which is beautiful to me.
Yeah, everything's connected, everything's moving, and like tying this back to where we started from, where how my love for comedy or you doing podcasts, and it's that yeah, we do find things to hold on to, find a purpose or whatever, things that get us happiness or whatever, and we move on with it, and we we tend to hold on to it. But life waits for no one, time waits for no one. Change is constant and change keeps on happening and going. It doesn't matter if you're feeling like an imposter. It doesn't matter if you don't believe in yourself or something. It just goes on and you just have to keep adapting to this change because in the end, that's everything. If you are going to continue with it, well and good, continue. If not, yeah, you're not. There's like there is like no the big meaning is that there is no meaning. I feel in a way.
Yeah.
The sense
yeah.
that
Yeah.
we are so powerless and so powerful at the same time. Like when we think of the last 2 years post pandemic and everything, it feels like everything has changed, but also nothing has changed. Like it went by so fast. So that's the thing,
Yeah.
I guess.
The
So
duality
that's
of life.
yeah.
Man, I think I'm just zoned out and thinking about like what we just had a conversation, the last part, right? Holy shit, man. I think every once in a while we just have to detach from ourselves and see ourselves being a part of a bigger picture, being a part of this entire universe, like we are being at the center of it. And what a great way to end this podcast. Thank you so much, Vaishak, for this a special episode, like this Golden Jubilee episode, like 50th. And I have expressed so many different thoughts that I had from a very long time, but I didn't get a chance to talk about them. And thanks to you that now I got a chance to express those things. So thank you, Vaishak.
Thanks for having me, Sankarshan. Congrats on 50. Here's to 500 more. And yeah, we are everything. Keep thinking. Everybody keep thinking. Keep listening. And there's always things to talk about. And everyone's life, everyone's single day is interesting. So tell your stories and listen. And yep, that's about it. Take care. Drink milk.
Take care, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. This podcast is now recorded on video as well as audio. If you want to listen to the audio version, head to JioSaavn, Spotify, Ghana, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast. And if you want to look at me, if you want to look at Vaishak, then head to YouTube. So,
Mainly Vaishak.
if you want to see how charming he is, go to YouTube. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, ladies and gentlemen.
Take care, everybody.
A Sankarshan Joshi trip.